was a book.
That's crazy.
Well, all
kidding aside, that's probably the best movie ever made.
So good.
I love that movie.
All of the Hannibal.
Whoa, that's a statement.
Yeah.
The Prestige is the best movie ever made?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Jono loves it. Wow.
Put a pin in that
Should
one.
do a movie night.
All kidding aside, all kidding, it's pretty good. I knew that would get a rise out of you.
Hey, welcome to the Votary Podcast. We're a team of filmmakers based in New England who are passionate about storytelling. We talk about the impact that stories have in every part of our lives, from business to culture and everything in between. Thanks for joining us.
Episode 14, I believe.
We should all be on like a panel.
Yeah, getting everyone on this episode
I felt like not working and coming on the podcast.
Getting everyone on the episode about books versus film. We don't have to just talk about books. I just thought it would be an interesting subject.
It's a good conversation starter.
Yes.
That's
Cody,
how
the
we
rules of
started.
like life are right now are like, don't be on your phone.
I'm
while
trying to find something relevant. I can't find it.
You're
What are you trying to
Googling the
find? What are you
answers
trying to
before the
find?
podcast.
I was trying.
Heavy
to
breathing.
Look at how Harvey's laying.
I'm
right
trying to
now.
find the
He's
Parks and
like
Rec quote
laying
on
straight.
Thoughts for Your Thoughts when he talks about books.
This is a story theme podcast. I'm like, why have we never ever talked about really any books? And then asking everyone to get on this podcast, and everyone's just it's been the
We're nervous about books.
nobody's wanted to do it.
Get scared.
I was so
It's scared.
excited for today's podcast, and then I heard it was about books, and
It's not about books. It's what do you like better?
when I heard it was about what do you like better, books or movies, I got scared.
Why? Because you're ashamed that you like movies
It's
better?
scary stuff.
I don't know if I do. I haven't read any books yet to know which one I like more.
The notion of reading a book horrifies me.
It's more of a phobia.
The Notion. So what books have you finished?
The Bible.
I know that's that's an undertaking, dude. You haven't actually done that though.
I don't think I've read the entire Bible cover to cover.
You should. There's some interesting stuff in the
Both
chapters nobody goes to.
Both covers are great.
Both covers.
Flip that baby over.
Well, naturally, Graci, I think I was going into this with the assumption I'm like, Gracie's gonna be like pro books. I'm gonna be like half and half, and then Jono is gonna be like movies, and Cody is like a wild card. I'm not sure.
Wait, I'm the
now
wild
I
card.
know. Yeah, now I guess you're the wild card.
I'm a little
Cody,
more wild
Cody
than
is,
you.
Cody is definitely more. Am I off by saying?
My favorite movie, Blue Like Jazz, about burning books, was originally a book, and then became a movie.
My favorite movie is The Green Book. And my favorite book is... It's just called Movie the Movie.
Well, my favorite movie is called The Book, and it's this movie that wasn't a book previously, but then they made a movie. I mean, they were thinking about writing the script, but they didn't write the script. I don't know. It's this whole thing.
Green Book. Jungle Book. What else?
the book that they have in the Neverending Story, that looks like it would be a really good book.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The emblem in the front, and I'm always curious. I'm like, did the words change? Because my thoughts are that whoever's reading it, you become the character in your story, which is kind of like, I don't know, a theme I go back to in my mind a lot.
Yeah, I was joking. There's no movie called The Book.
I know. Oh yeah, for the listeners.
I'm letting people know when I'm joking.
Oh, listeners, by the way, everything Jono says is sarcastic if you haven't figured it out yet.
But Princess Bride, great movie. That's got a book being read the whole time. What do you think about that? Pretty unique.
What was the movie? I used to watch a lot as a kid. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like the kid, he's like riding his bike through a thunderstorm, and he like finds
The Library.
in the library.
Oh, the Page Master.
Is that what that's called?
Yeah, the Page Master. And dude, you know who that little boy is?
No.
That's not Harry Potter.
You don't remember who that actor is?
Nope.
Macaulay.
I don't remember.
It's Macaulay Culkin.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Dude, I used to want to watch The Page Master like every week. There was like a 2-year time in my life where my friends had all the movies that I just didn't have any movies. I had the cartoon Lion King on VHS, and I watched that thing until it wore out. And then I had like a couple things that were like ripped off of, when you can
Ripped off of what?
when you can record movies that are on TV.
Yeah, on
your
VHS. Okay.
Why was that so hard for me to say?
You know.
And then I had, the other movies that I had.
Macaulay Culkin, he went on a tear there for a few years. We Christmas time we watched Uncle Buck, and I hadn't seen that forever, and I was like, oh wow, And first of all, what kind of name is that? Macaulay? Is that a first name? Is that
well? And you try to read it, especially before you hear it, and you're like, it sounds like
I've never heard
you're
that
eating
name.
peanuts.
Sound
while
like
you're saying
the Ghanaian newscaster trying to read soccer scores.
yeah, the video you guys were watching earlier.
Don't demonstrate.
Well, what about the Page Master though?
I was just thinking.
We're just thinking about books,
I
man.
was just thinking about movies that are about books. That's all. I just remember. I don't even remember the plot of the movie. I just remember he's in
You
the
didn't
library.
ask me anything about Princess Bride.
He just he enters a book, right? Like magically.
Yeah, he gets in it.
Multiple books. Yeah, he can open books and then just go into those worlds. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that is a cool concept. They should make a new one of those.
What were you gonna say, Gracie?
I was going to ask, should you know the saying, don't judge a book by its cover? Should you judge movies by their covers?
I do all the time, which is funny because I love that saying. I used to say that to my mom when, she would say that about books because, she'd be like, she'd recommend books to me. And I'm like, I'm not going to read that, Mom. And then she would see the movies that I would buy or whatever and always have something to say about it. Like, how can you watch that or whatever? I'm like, Mom, don't judge movies by their cover. But
What are we calling the cover of
Is
a
it the
movie?
trailer?
no, like the actual cover, right? Like
Like
you
the
pick up a
actual
DVD.
poster.
You're at a Barnes and Noble. You pick up a DVD, you judge it. You pick up a book, you judge it.
Got it.
Like that.
Yeah.
The thing with the book,
yeah.
though, Linnell recently got a book, and she started reading it, and then she's like, that book I just got? She's like, it sucks. I'm not going to read the rest of it. It's a commitment, right? It's like this.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I going to do? Read the whole thing and then be like, if I like it or not?
Did she like how it looked?
Yeah, she'd like the cover.
I think that's really common with a lot of modern writers, like just the bestsellers that you see at Barnes and Noble, for example. They all have gorgeous designs, and then the writing is
So you think a lot of modern authors have better book covers than they do?
Yes.
That's funny.
Sad.
That's why I always get sucked into those romance novels in the grocery store.
You're like, this guy's pecs on a castle
Kidding me?
with his purple shirt blowing in the wind.
There's
I
no
mean,
way that's his real hair.
What's not?
No
what's
way.
not to?
Gotta find out.
It's not the leg. Well, the idea I really wanted to explore with this chaos is what's the better storytelling medium, and is that an unanswerable question? It's more like a subjective, but
I don't you were asking me earlier, what do I prefer, or
What
what's
side are you on?
better? And I would obviously, if we had a choice to only watch movies or read books for the rest of my life, I would say read books. But I think
there
that
you go.
they are very different mediums.
Yeah.
I think that they can be appreciated. They have to be appreciated in different ways, and you can have crappy reading. You can have crappy books, and you can have crappy movies, and you can watch or read for the same reasons. I don't know. I think they can just be appreciated in different ways, or they should be appreciated in different ways. You shouldn't go into a movie expecting it to be read to you.
Going off of what you're saying, some books or books in general can describe something in a way a movie cannot give you that detail or those intimate thoughts.
Yeah.
But then movies can show you and use music and give you an experience.
It's a whole different experience
that you could never experience. So I think where people start comparing is, that was a book adapted to a movie.
Yeah.
And then people have this, it's like when you read the book and you get to know it and you imagine it the way you imagine it. I think of the Harry Potter series when I read those, like third grade, I'm reading it and not even saying the characters' names right. I'm saying like Hagrid or whatever, and it really is like Hagrid or whatever. So the whole like 6 books in, I'm like reading the character name wrong. Mm-hmm. Like I have imagined them all looking this way, and then they do describe it to a certain degree. Like Ron Weasley, red hair or whatever it is, but in the scar and all this. And so then when you watch the movie, you have this preconceived idea of what the characters look like, and then you inherently are boxed in to whatever the movie's showing, and then you almost get frustrated by that because you're like, now I have to view this character that was in my mind a different way.
Yeah.
And so I think people do the comparison, or they get mad when the book was really intimate and they have viewed it their way and it was their thing, and now it's a movie and now it's some other thing that they have to compare it to,
Yeah.
But I think if a movie was a movie on its own, it can do something completely different than a book. So
aren't you glad you read it first though? Because I saw Lord of the Rings before I read Lord of the Rings, and I'm rereading them now.
I did not read Lord of the Rings.
Well, I can only imagine, what images I would have come up with, like the way Tolkien writes.
Yeah.
And the first time I read through Lord of the Rings, all I was envisioning was the movie, which wasn't a bad thing, but it was just like I'm not able to let my imagination kind of conjure images on their own or have it be my own kind of thing. Because that, like you said, that's a special thing about books, I think, is everyone feels like ownership over it because they lived in their own little imaginary world as they read it. And it's like unique to them and who they are and their experiences and like the way their imagination works. And obviously the writing, but that's something that's special. And with a film, it's not, people might have different interpretations, but it kind of, it's there.
Yeah.
For you,
like I never read Star Wars, so.
I did read, like, I watched Emma by Jane Austen, for example, first. Watched the movie Emma before I read the book.
Interesting.
And it actually like changed how I could remember the actual story. Like I could remember the story elements that they included in the movie and not all of the little pieces that they left out of it from the book. I just like couldn't remember all those details as well. It was like that was one.
I'm curious if you must actually use different parts of your brain, reading versus just ingesting visuals, right?
That's why, like, I don't know. I think reading is better in some ways, just because like
probably healthier.
It's healthier, and it does develop your brain.
Really?
It develops like your language.
Squinting at those little words.
It
maybe you
hours on end. I mean,
no, it's true. It does help your brain develop differently. I think I probably got spoiled by getting read to a lot when I was younger, and I really enjoyed that. And I have a very good audio memory, and my imagination is always going in during the day anyway. And so I still love listening to like audiobooks and everything.
Do you consider listening to an audiobook reading a book?
Like at the same time?
No, do you consider when you've listened to an audiobook that you've read that book?
Yeah, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I enjoy both actually.
Yeah.
You put the words in your brain.
It's different. Yeah, it's a different experience because you can go at your own pace when you're reading on your own. I zone out sometimes when I'm reading, and I'll get to the bottom of a page and realize that I was thinking about something else. It's not that way when I'm listening, maybe as much because it's happening to you versus like your eyes just kind of glazing over. Mm-hmm. That's probably a pretty common nowadays because I think our brains are trained to be a little more.
Yeah.
Maybe our brains are getting lazier.
I think that movies, like, you don't have to train your brain to imagine because you're seeing it. Yeah. And whereas with reading, it's like you're having to conjure up images. Yeah. I can't take you seriously.
What?
Yeah. Those images.
I'm just reacting because I keep hearing the mic sound when you.
I won't touch it.
this
Sorry.
sound.
What mic sound?
You don't hear when she starts doing this thing. There's like a
Reverberation.
No, I didn't hear it at all.
We're probably
okay.
ruining this podcast.
It's fine. We'll just cut you.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
cut
cut
you
you all out.
Every time I go to talk,
I'm gonna use the pen tool.
It just
The pen-
just hard cuts to somebody else. Here's my thing. I actually love reading. When I read a book, I enjoy it thoroughly and I get so much out of it. And like I love to I really retain it and regurgitate the information and I enjoy it. I never do it. Like I never seek out a book. Like I think it's I don't know, maybe I'm just lazy.
I feel like my problem recently has been the, idea of wanting to read a book is actually coming back. When it was assigned to me, I actually enjoyed reading the class book that we had to read or reading the summer reading list or whatever. And then as you get older and you go through college, I'm like, or, just in life, you're reading more, not as much fiction, at least for me. And then all of a sudden I'm reading nothing ever. And then, I feel like my problem recently is I don't know where to go to find like a really, like, I'm like, Leno went to the library and all this stuff and I went with her and I'm like, I have no idea what is good. Like I'm looking up like, leadership books or like, stuff that is like tactical that I can like know like, oh, that'd be a really cool idea to learn, but not like, oh, this is a really great story. Like when I was a kid, there was like so many fun series and books and the Treehouse Gang and like all this different stuff that was like worlds that I could explore and imagine. And now I'm just like, what's a good fiction book for adults that's fun and engaging? Like, I don't know.
Well, you said like leadership tactical books. Does that mean like you'd rather read
I don't know if I would
nonfiction?
rather. No, I don't know if I would rather.
It's just like naturally what you go to because you can apply it immediately to your life.
Exactly. So I read the not the Key Person of Influence, the other one that we had from Dent, the Entrepreneurial Revolution or whatever. I read that and it was pretty cool. And then, I got the audiobook of Atomic Habits. Jed recommended it and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to these. I'm like, well, these are things that I can like be using as I'm trying to improve as a person and do all this stuff. But then I'm like, also leisure and fun and, enjoyment. Like I think my brain is categorized books as more learning than,
that makes sense.
So I'm not thinking like, oh, I'll relax and read a book. I'm like, okay, if I'm in my car, I'll put on an audiobook or a podcast or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a time in my life where I really had no interest in any fiction. Like I only wanted to read like self-help books and books about philosophy and spirituality and all these kinds of things. And now I like don't have any interest in that. I just want all like fiction or I just like listen to podcasts, music, and I want like all kind of like novels and fiction for reading.
Because then I think to myself, I watch these movies that I don't care if it's a true story. The director, the writer had something to say, a lesson to teach me, and I usually reflect on it at the end. I'm like, wow, that was like, that sits with you and you think about the story and you think about the characters, and I'm used to that and I like that. I love unique movies, indie films, things that are like new and fresh, and then I'm like, well, there's got to be, I guess this is me just thought dumping. I'm like, there's got to be books that I could be reading that are also doing that same thing. That it's not just movies. So I guess my maybe it's just easier, less friction to put on Netflix.
It is easier.
Research,
It is,
find a book, order it, read it, and then like I said, it's a commitment. If I'm starting it, I'm like, oh, this sucks. Yeah. There's no like movie trailer for
parts
it.
of your brains, your brain you're using, your brains.
My brains.
Your multiple ones.
All my brains.
Well, all of our collective brains separately. Well, I mean, I knew we were going to be a little biased. We're a film company where you get movies recommended to you left and right. I have some friends who are recommending books, and I'm like, yeah, I would love to read that. Just once you have a list of books, it's even more overwhelming than a list of movies because it's like it's not a 2-hour investment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when people keep recommending really good shows, you're like, I don't have time for like to watch like 10 shows. It's like so it's like I also have struggled with finishing books. You have to be really invested. Like I'm in Return of the King right now. I don't know what happened. It's like the climax of the maybe I don't want it to end, but it's like the climax of Return of the King, and I've put it down for like a month and a half.
One word a day.
But I was reading it every day
Yeah.
for a while. I was in it. I was like, yes, I'm back in Middle Earth. And then I'm just like, all right. And then just like super epic to Return of the King.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. I don't know why I'm doing that.
I think like another thing that makes watching stuff easier to go to is that it's more communal. Like if you're
That's true.
with
yeah.
with friends or your spouse or whatever, you know,
Mhm.
I've never been like, hey, you like. We've definitely had times where we're both reading our own books and like we're next to each other reading, but it's way more of like a shared experience if you're gonna watch something together, and so
Yeah.
it's an easier thing to go to.
I had a really like nerdy experience with a group of friends at one point where we like once a week would meet up and someone would read aloud to a book, and we would sit around and listen to
love
it
that.
and then talk about it. It was so nerdy, but I
That's
loved
so
it.
good.
Nerd.
But that's the thing, like, why not do that? Like, there's no,
Yeah.
it's like, why do I think that's weird when, we're just experiencing a story together. And it was, I think it was the Never Ending Story series.
It probably just has to do with like I think you were just saying like just the amount of time that it takes. Like it's not an instant like satisfaction. Like you're gonna take time to get to the end. Especially if you have a busy life and it's not on your like priority list. And I think that we're just like so used to having more of a like being able to finish things quickly.
Yeah.
Have something else that we've accomplished.
Well, that's definitely true. Books require an attention span that is ever decreasing, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like I wonder what the rate of consumption is between books and movies.
It's definitely decreasing for sure.
Oh, I mean, I would imagine movies are just blowing them out of the water.
I mean, I know people my age that have read like one book in their lifetime, even like outside of
What?
school. That's wild to me.
Well,
That blows my-
outside of school, you're saying?
and inside of school.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I used to view books as being like school assignments until I was in my 20s. I didn't associate books with something that would enhance my life.
I think that's part of the problem. I mean,
Well, then what? Like, we don't
assign
we
them?
don't assign books.
We assign movies, and then kids will hate movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go to
that's
books.
that's a good plan.
I mean, I think for you guys, like it probably has something to do with, what field you work in too, because you like being filmmakers, it's much more like visually driven.
Yeah.
And like reading for me, like writing, I can't write well without reading.
Yeah.
Because it does help to develop language in a way that you can't otherwise. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. But
Yeah, no.
but yeah, like it helps to develop like written language as well as articulation, like verbal articulation. Like there have been times when I've just like read C.S. Lewis straight for like a few weeks, and then my writing looks exactly like it's in his voice, and it just helps to
Comes all
articulate.
British.
Yeah, it comes out completely British
No, I've
vocabulary.
I've heard Stephen King and a lot of other reputable writers say that the best way to write to up the ante on your writing is just to read.
Yeah,
It's
seriously.
like, well, yeah, makes sense.
I remember reading a series where the vocab was so far above my head, and then I started to learn, not even looking up what they were. I just started to learn and infer what that meant, and I started to like really like grow in my like understanding of breaking down a word based on that's the beginning of this word is a word I know, and it must mean this, and it forced me to like fill in the gap of like, what's the context of the situation,
Yeah,
and what's going on.
that's a really good
and
point.
and what's this word I don't know, and what could it mean? And if I really didn't know, I could look it up. But it definitely helped me, think in a
it's
new
like
way.
problem solving in a
Exactly.
way. Yeah.
So I find it obnoxious if I'm reading something and it's like overly flowery in the language, because sometimes
Unnecessarily.
Well, I mean, I enjoy flowery dialogue or
Define
a wide
flower.
What, like books on
vocabulary.
lilacs or something?
Jono.
Or is it
I don't know if
other
I can.
types?
I mean, you know it when you read it. You know, where it's
Yeah.
just like you didn't need to because it's not adding level of detail where I'm
not concise.
understanding
Yeah.
something deeper or an abstract
Yeah.
concept in a deeper way. That's not what I mean. I mean just like the vocab is so over the top.
Well, it's like don't use a $50 word when a $1 word would do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
like
and there's naturally a balance I think there. Like some of it might just be like, please use small words so I understand. Like, but some of it is just
But no.
like, okay, you're
Using
just
words
kind of
artfully,
you're
yeah.
kind of just
Yeah,
flexing
that's
your writing.
I joke, but that's exactly how I felt when I did watch Tenet.
you
I
watched
felt like
Tenet, yeah.
Nolan was just flexing, and he didn't have to do
That's funny.
any of it. And I felt
Yeah.
like he was just tooting his own horn the whole movie, and I was like,
For those of you who play the drinking game that you take a shot every time Tenet gets brought up in our podcast.
Anyways, but I guess it's just human nature, You if you're good at something, you just try and flex, and then people hate it.
Well, I think some writers aren't actually trying to. It's just how they write.
They're just
Yeah.
caught
I
up
get
in
that,
it.
But anyway, yeah, I read in the book On Writing by Stephen King, and I'm not even a really big
Such a
Stephen
good-
King.
Good book.
Well, yeah, but that book is fascinating. But he talks about that where he's like, if he describes how to communicate really well, and he addresses that like you don't actually need to add all these adjectives, adverbs, and things that are unnecessary or that aren't
Yeah.
actually concise in your messaging. But it can help.
And that's a horror.
No, it's autobiography,
Okay.
basically.
No, I feel like that with editing. I feel like editing, I have to cut down. How can I get this point across with the, I guess, most brevity, really, in the edit? Like, I don't want someone to have to sit around for longer than they have to get the idea. The first cut might be too long, but always bringing it down to what is the most impactful, the meat of the story, like we like to say. Gotta get the meat. I assume it's the same with writing. How can you get the idea? And comedy, right? The best jokes are just the funniest truths in the least amount of words. So you're just putting it out there. I mean, of course, storytelling.
Yeah,
it's funny too when you tell stories.
Like you want to show and not tell your readers or your viewers what you're trying to communicate, like in your writing and in like what you're filming or what you're editing down too.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything you have to ask, like, okay, is this adding anything to the story?
It's like movies that have the what's that called? Expository dialogue.
Yeah.
It's just so funny, and it's not funny. I mean,
well,
Yeah.
almost every movie does have that, but
when it's obvious, it's so
Yeah.
bad.
What is an example of like what movie are you thinking?
Well, I can't even think of them. Well, I've seen one recently. I just don't remember what it is. But it's like when they say like instead of showing what's going on, showing the emotions of the character thinking, you're like, "Hey man, what's going on? Sorry, your mom died." And he's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm about to get in the car and go to the funeral." And it's like, okay, like that's necessary to a degree in the dialogue, but you're gonna want to like show him like there could be something in the scene that he could have a photo of his mom, and you're like, okay, that's clearly something happened, and then you're like wondering, oh, what happened? It's like even with photography, I've seen just like a photo on Instagram of a grocery store with a bag of groceries laying on the ground, or like some flowers, and you're like, what happened here? Did someone get mugged? Like, what's going on here? As opposed to just a picture of the store itself, you'd be like, oh, it's just a store. Like if there's something there that piques your intrigue, makes you think what's going on, like, and actually pulls you into it, so you become an active participant. To me, that's way more engaging than just being spoon fed. Here's the character, and I'm mad because of this, and I don't know.
Well, yeah, it takes you out of it. And if you're wanting to make a very singular point, it's obvious that you're going to need some exposition, but it's also when you open things to up to interpretation a little more, you don't actually have to, lay it on thick, and then it's like, oh, maybe people will read this differently or view this differently, and the point isn't so like heavy-handed. I mean, we've talked about that, I think, several times about the importance of that, because it's just anything other than that just ends up being like making your eyes roll. It's like, oh, Brad in accounting, Brad's whose girlfriend broke up with him, and now, it's just like, oh, you're, like,
Why
people
all
don't talk like that.
We're all envisioning an office environment with cubicles.
Yeah.
Hey, man, what's going on? Sorry, your cat died.
Yeah.
How about examples of books that became movies?
Well, we kind of talked about the big ones, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Hunger Games.
Narnia.
Twilight.
Yeah.
Percy Jackson.
I don't think I've read any of those. I think I have.
Well, I was just trying to figure out what made. I know not everybody is like sold on the Lord of the Rings movies, especially like the Tolkien purists or whatever. But like,
who are these Tolkien
I know.
purists?
I don't know. I'm apparently not one of them. But like, why is it that we actually like the people that have read the books, loved the books, and also loved the movies? Like, why is it that we love these movies, even though there were changes in the details of the story? And why did we like this as opposed to not liking some of the Hunger Games, for example?
Do you feel like it's because they're not just trying to replicate, they're actually showing the things that you're missing? So, how we talked about that in a book, there's things that you can learn.
Yeah.
In a movie, there's things that you could never read, like expression, like, certain nuances or in a movie. Maybe it's because instead of just trying to word for word replicate a book, like, that's probably part of it. They're adding to it, right?
Yeah, like they're capturing at least the essence of what we loved about the books.
Yeah, like to your point earlier, like each has their own strength.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, obviously I'm biased. Like Lord of the Rings are like my favorite movies, and I actually like, as much as I like the books, I like the movies more. Because I think he just kind of used the books as an inspiration and a template, and there's so much detail that then he takes that and uses film in all the strengths that film has in that medium, and just it just enhances all of it rather than just trying to go page by page like it would be unfilmable. And Tolkien himself said, like, nobody should make a movie out of this. Like, it's not like you can't do it, because if you made a movie out of just scene by scene, page by page, and just shot that, like it would be like unwatchable.
Yeah.
Well, it's like how the Witcher was a video game, and then they made the Witcher series on Netflix. You're taking the same world with the same characters, and you're adding to the story. You're showing
you're
these
making it
characters
work in that format.
Yeah, so you adhere to the lore and to the story and to the character motives and the backstories, and you keep those things right, but then you're building on it in something that's not just, I'm going to copy it to make money, because people see right through that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, they're just trying to turn this book into a series and make money,
After I saw the first episode of The Witcher, I like recommended it to people, and then I kept watching it, and I was like so embarrassed because like halfway through, I'm like, oh, this takes a real
I didn't like
turn.
the first episode that much, but
I haven't seen it yet.
So Jamin was over, and he was, and
really?
Dave, I think, or like I had a couple friends over, and they were like, sorry if it wasn't you, Jamin, but I was like, I don't know about that after I saw the first episode, because it looked corny. Like, I was like, I'm not into like mythical stuff. Like, ugh. And then they were like, no, next episode, and I was like, okay. And then I ended up liking it. In the end, had a really interesting story. The way they were telling it, you didn't know that they were telling it this way till the end. So at the end, you were like, oh snap, that's that's the timeline. Like you didn't realize it the whole time, which is really cool.
Yeah, I liked it by the end, and I liked it in the first episode mainly because I was just like, ooh, like fantasy. Like I was really
You're in love
wanting
with
like a Game of Thrones kind of vibe. And I'm like, oh, like some sort of like medieval fantasy.
Mike loves Garrett.
But like in the middle, I was like, oh, this is rough. And like my friends were like, why did you recommend this? This is terrible. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like.
Yeah.
I can't believe how many
What are you looking up?
movies,
Text messages
movies.
you're
No,
Man, I am popular.
I can't believe
I
how
have
many.
so many emails.
I can't believe how many movies were books that I had no idea.
Well,
about.
how about we learn how many movies got turned into books?
See, I was wondering about that, but
Star Wars.
Because if it works one way, could it work the other? I mean,
can you think of one example?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
I'm pretty
feels
sure
like
Shooter,
super counterfeit though. Like
because like wasn't Shooter with Mark Wahlberg?
Yeah.
I saw that and like on the shelf at like Walmart.
Are you
or
sure
something.
that it wasn't? Because I think
You could be right.
I think sometimes they take books that movies are made out of books, and then the movie becomes popular, and then they re-release the book
Yeah.
with like the movie cover.
yeah.
I'm fuming.
But
right
tell
now.
me if
Like
you
Dune.
tell me if you
Why?
tell me if you knew these were books first. Requiem for a Dream. Did you know that was a book? Requiem for a Dream.
No.
No.
Did
Gracie?
you-
Sorry. Sometimes
I don't think I knew.
I forget to
No.
read.
None of us knew.
No.
Bridge to Terabithia.
Yes.
Did you read it?
Favorite book.
Probably when I was a kid. Probably one of those that I had to read.
Girl on the Train.
Yes.
Dragon Tattoo.
Nope.
That I
That's
knew.
different, but that too.
The Godfather.
Yes.
No, I didn't know
I
that.
knew that.
How about Fantastic Mr. Fox?
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I read that as a kid.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
I did too.
Yeah.
Royal
Oh, of
Dahl.
course. Yeah, of course.
How
Dude,
about
Royal Dahl is like he's the king.
The
He's like the
Dahl.
kids' book king.
The Beach.
Yeah, I did know about that. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite.
What's the beach?
With Leo. That movie. You remember that?
Nope. I don't know it.
Oh wait. I lost it. The director of The Beach. He's done so many good movies.
Is the beach good?
The Beach is
The
great.
movie's good. I don't know about the book. I didn't know it was a book.
I haven't read the book, but
I'm sure the book's terrible.
Revolutionary
Just kidding.
Road. That's another Leo movie, I think.
it is. Yeah,
I think so.
that movie is a rough watch.
Why?
It's just so
Like the
gut
Like
wrenching.
story.
Like just
yeah.
How
their
about-
relationship. It's just like, oh man,
How about Jaws?
I didn't know that.
I actually did know that. That blows my mind.
Crazy. How about The Prestige?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
There's a book.
That's crazy.
well,
All kidding aside, that's probably the best movie ever made.
So good.
I love that movie.
all
So
of
good.
the Hannibal.
whoa, that's a statement.
Yeah.
The Prestige
Should
is
watch
the
it.
best movie ever made.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Jono loves it. Wow.
Put a pin in that
Should
one.
do
Okay,
a movie night.
All kidding aside, all kidding, it's pretty good. I knew that would get a rise out of you.
All the Hannibal movies were books.
I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
I knew that.
Jurassic Park.
I mean, Silence of the Lambs is way too like well thought out to
Clockwork
just
Orange.
be a screenplay only.
A Clockwork Orange is on here as a book. I didn't
You didn't know that?
No, clearly I don't know anything about books.
I mean,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Clockwork Orange is one
I
that
don't
I read after I saw it because that used to be one of my
See,
favorites.
I would read that, but I wouldn't watch it. Like
I-
I would rather.
I
would
would
rather
definitely recommend
visualize it.
You would rather visualize
I'd
it?
rather visualize it as
Well,
opposed to seeing
I
it.
would actually recommend watching it over reading it because
Why?
because the book is way more disturbing. He is like 14 in it. There's some scenes with like, underage like very young girls and the descriptions are
I
much
guess more
more disturbing
details,
to me
yeah.
Which one are we talking
than
about?
Clockwork Orange. And Clockwork Orange, that's not the point of it. Everyone gets hung up on like the ultra violence as they call it, and it's like that's not the point of the
That
story.
whole era of books is like so fascinating. Like, what is it called? Like postmodern society or something.
Yeah, I think we're
Like
probably still
Brave
in
New
that.
World and all those are great.
Oh, like almost like dystopian.
Like dystopian, yeah.
Yeah, I love A Clockwork Orange. I don't think that's Stanley Kubrick's best film, like as far as his his vision and like the technical aspects, but it's my favorite.
Is it one of the? Is it
my
one of his
favorite of
first?
No,
No?
It was made in the 70s, and he had made a good amount of movies, but he's only made like 11 movies or something.
Okay.
You know, he didn't
He's
even
had a
making
long
movies.
career too.
Yeah, even making movies from the 50s on. It's not that many. It's not
Yeah.
that many.
Just to finish out this list,
Yeah, I'm interested.
American Psycho. That was a book.
Yes.
I knew that. Yeah.
Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Classic.
Game of Thrones.
Don't even
Yeah.
say Breakfast Club.
The Secret Garden.
Yes. That was one of my childhood books.
Are any of those surprising to you?
Um,
Because those are pretty famous books.
The Notebook.
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was a book.
I didn't see
Wonder
the
if
movie
it's
or hear
from-
much about it or anything. So-
Memoirs of a Geisha was a book.
Yeah.
Slumdog
Yeah.
Millionaire was a book.
Yeah. Danny Boyle, that he did Slumdog Millionaire and he did The Beach. Oh, I knew it would come to me.
My Sister's Keeper. Gone Girl.
Sisterhood of the Traveling
Gone Girl, I
Pants.
knew.
Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
All right, now we're just getting into a list of just all books.
Well, this
ever.
is
Why don't you
Crazy.
read me a list? Why don't you read a book? Honestly, that might
seriously.
be kind of nice.
The Bourne series. The Bourne Identity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh!
So and there's never been a movie. There's never been a movie
what
that
was that
wasn't a
author?
book.
James.
Is what this is the. That should be the title.
Well-
there's never been a movie that wasn't a book.
No, but like, it's definitely, I think, easier for a lot of directors and writers to have something to go off of.
No
you know?
Country
like a
for Old
script.
Men.
Yeah, man. We talked about that.
V for Vendetta.
Yes, I knew that.
Of course. Well, that was a graphic novel, right?
A Walk to Remember.
Wait, don't even tell me Spider Man's
I
on there.
want to remember. I read.
Silk Trees. Was a book.
Batman?
Here's a book that I read.
For a second, I really thought it was on there. My brain just melted.
Here's an actual book that I read that became a movie. Holes.
Ooh. Which was better?
the last
book or the
time,
movie?
the last
book.
time Cody read a book.
I had to read Holes like 5 times.
You know,
I don't think I ever read it.
What would be interesting to
The
talk
Devil
about too
Wears Prada.
is books that we hope never get made into movies.
Oh, yes.
What?
For me, Kurt Vonnegut.
Forrest Gump.
Kurt Vonnegut is my
Come on.
one of my favorite novelists, and I kind of don't want any of his stories.
What are some of his books?
Sirens of Titan, Slaughterhouse 5, Mother Night, Cat's Cradle. I
don't
kind of
think I read
hope
any of
that
those.
all of them stay books.
Yeah.
Sirens of Titan is like this sci-fi, like it's very
I'll read
very
it.
cinematic. It's very, it would actually make a good movie, but
Well, I mean, I can make it. We could do it.
we could do it.
We
Let's do it.
could do it. I mean,
But I did hear that I don't know if it was Dan Harmon or one of the Rick and Morty guys got the rights to Sirens of Titan,
Okay, cool.
and
Finally, it'll be made into a
and
movie.
so it'll be a cartoon series, which actually could work and could be cool. But I don't know. There's something about
Recommend me a book.
I just did Sirens of Titan.
But I'll wait for the series.
Tyrants of Satan.
I'll wait for
Tires
the
of Satan.
I'd rather watch that as an animated series. So,
Yeah, just wait.
Who knows?
was Rick and Morty a book?
That Rick and Morty was based on Doc and Marty from Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, and that was a book.
Interesting.
What are some books that you hope never get made into movies, Gracie?
That's a great question.
You're like all of them that I've ever read.
I mean, I Luke and I were talking about this earlier. The C.S. Lewis has a sci-fi series, Out of a Silent Planet, Paralandra, and That Hideous Strength.
Yeah, Paralandra is beautiful.
It's like it's such a stunning.
Is that one better than
Series.
Sirens of Titans?
No.
Ooh.
I feel like if it was to be made, it would just have to be made by a very specific person with a very specific, like medium.
Mm-hmm.
Like Luke was talking about whether it should be made in like an anime sort of Studio Ghibli type of feel as opposed to like just a normal anime.
Well,
And
if
for like Out of a Silent Planet, for example.
yeah, if those were made with like almost like
It could easily be like super perverted.
or just cheesy.
Yeah.
Like some of the visuals, like if someone just did that with like CGI and it didn't have like an insane budget and they like blend practical and everything really well, it could just come off so like tacky, you know, which you would never want.
I used to love the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
Books.
Oh my
There's like
gosh.
multiple of them.
I've
I used
only
to love
read
those.
part of the first one.
Yeah,
Those
it
are
actually made me
crazy.
laugh.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
That's actually a decent
It could
book
be
to movie.
fun.
Book to movie.
Or book to show.
That movie was decent.
book to TV
when
show?
did it come out?
I don't remember, 2007 maybe or something.
And it was good?
You never saw it?
No.
If you like those books, I think it still has the same kind of tone. It has that sort of dry wit.
Yeah.
Which that's what makes those books like hilarious.
Yeah.
They're so good. They're
They
so
were funny.
vivid, but also hilarious.
Yeah.
And I also wouldn't want Till We Have Faces to be made into a movie unless I were to do it.
Oh,
So
I like that.
Nobody can do that.
Well, that's kind of like where Peter Jackson was. He was just like, I love these stories so much. I don't want anyone
He
else to
honored
make it
them.
except for
That's
me.
another thing. Like he honored
That's
the
part
story.
of that's part of why some movies are really good, because you can, like what we're saying, it's not just I want to make money off of the series, which would be very franchisable. It would be I passionately love this book, and no one else is going to tell the story like I do.
I don't.
Right.
Did you ever read Percy Jackson or like hear of Percy Jackson series?
No.
In the modern world, like Greek mythology enters modern world. Super good. But yeah, I loved it as a kid. And they made the first 3 movies and ruined it. Like you could tell that they just entirely
I've seen those advertised. Yeah,
Yeah.
they did not do well.
they didn't do
What are
well.
they called?
Like Percy Jackson series.
Yeah, but what are the...
There's the Lightning Thief, Sea of Monsters, and I don't remember if they made the third one actually.
Because that sounds familiar to me. I just can't remember.
Yeah,
if
they-
a book that's familiar.
It was like 2015, 2012. I don't remember exactly, but
Oh yeah.
that was one of those things where I was so psyched for it, and they like completely changed the story, or almost entirely changed the story, and you could tell it was like it had no depth to it or like anything. They just ruined it.
How come they stopped making the Chronicles of Narnia?
I think after Voyage of the Dawn Treader, people were like, "You should not do this."
I remember seeing that. Whatever was that the third one?
That's the third one.
I remember seeing the third one in theaters twice, and both times me and my buddy were just making fun of it the whole time.
Yeah, they
Like it was honestly hilarious for us. We were
I made
dying.
fun of Prince Caspian. I didn't even see the third one.
I didn't like that they changed Prince Caspian. I didn't like what they comparing it to the book. I didn't love the changes that they made, but I could appreciate Prince Caspian.
Imagine those being
But-
like a really raw, like well done, like
I think
Maybe-
that they
maybe
should
even
be
a
redone.
series.
I think they
That
should
could be
redone.
amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought the first one was, I saw it when I was a kid. So
No,
I
I mean
don't know.
I love the first one.
Yes, the first one holds up, right?
They did beautifully with
The
that
first one and the new one.
Isn't what's his face? What plays the like goat person?
Oh,
I can't think.
James McAvoy.
James McAvoy.
'Cause I
He's
remember
amazing.
He's so good.
He's so good.
No,
there was
it-
old ones too, right? Because I remember seeing the old
The
ones when I was a
BBC
kid.
ones.
Maybe
Yes.
I don't know.
Wait,
Those
really?
are funny. Yeah, they made all
I don't
of
know
them,
if they were
except
even funny.
they were. If you go back on them now, you should just watch some clips
Okay.
of like the beavers from Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
They're just like humans covered in fur with like these
'Cause honestly,
red eyes.
I like the awkward practical stuff.
Yeah.
in older stuff, like so much
Yeah.
more than even
The awkward
most
CGI.
even
They
most
did-
modern CGI. I would prefer like
They did
awkward
really
people and like
well with like the
googly eyes.
story in the BBC versions. Like they did really well to like just capture the story.
all right.
Yeah, because I remember as a kid reading that series or being read to by my parents, and a lot of times not being able to picture
Yeah.
what was going on. Like
Yeah.
like it sounds so. I was like, how do I picture this creature or this like situation? I remember the one where they go to the island. There's like all these like little tiny things and
Yeah.
jumping trampolines and all this stuff. Like I was like, I couldn't picture it at all. So then to go and see Lion, Witch in the Wardrobe and like be able to really see like
yeah.
the characters, like for me, I kept watching those over and over as a kid. So,
Yeah.
I mean, in that regard, it actually helped.
I always wondered what Turkish Delight was.
Yeah.
They seemed pumped about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I had it at the Seattle market, Pike's Place market.
What is it? It's like a...
It's like a chewy substance covered in powdered sugar.
it's
I didn't-
delightful.
I didn't-
It's
Turkish
really
Delight?
good. It's good. I had not great Turkish Delight.
Yeah, same.
But
I didn't
There's nothing
love
worse
it when
than
I had it.
subpar Turkish Delight.
yeah,
It's like...
I think you
If
either get
delight is in the name,
It's like
it
That
should
thing
be
better
you're like,
be
wow,
the best thing
you
you've ever had.
you better win me over. You know a book that has been done time and time again, but actually is a really interesting format is Dracula. It's done all in like journal entries. Like that's the style of it. So
Wow.
it's written as if you kind of stumble upon someone's really well written journal, which
That's so
is
fascinating.
pretty amazing.
I actually read that book.
You read Dracula?
I did.
Did you like it?
I remember reading it. I think I was in high school. I remember being like enjoying
It's
it.
dense, but it's incredible, and it's just been done so often. And I remember it being recommended to me. I mean, I doubt he would ever stumble upon this, but this guy worked in a milk farm that I used to work in, and he was just the most gruff, like beer gut, super tall, like. I just remember his calf muscles were like this big. Like he's just like this giant dude. And just the last guy that you expect to like come in and like give you book like recommendations. I don't know why. Like I know that's kind of like judgy,
Shouldn't judge a book
but I'm like,
by its cover.
I'm like 16 and he comes in and he's always got his shirt open, just like big old beer gut. And he'd always like have these super fast, like deep philosophical discussions with me as he's just taking
Milking
things out of the
cows.
store. No, he's just grabbing milk out of the store and like in like groceries
Drinking
because
it right from the
he,
cow?
he worked. He actually, yeah, he was one of the guys who worked in the barn, but he would just grab stuff because he worked there and he'd just like, I'm not paying for this. And he would just grab it. And in that however long it took him to grab stuff, he would have these deep discussions with me, you know, like super fast. And he saw that I was reading Paralandria and he's like, oh, that's that like C.S. Lewis guy. And he had like all these like, you know, negative things to say about C.S. Lewis as a person. I'm like, I just like, you know, fantasy. He's like, oh, what you should read is Dracula. And I'm just like, this guy is next level. But then I actually read it and I really enjoyed it.
super interesting.
And I was really surprised because it's been done so many times and it's kind of like, I think Dracula is kind of cheesy. Like just the character.
Like how we imagine
just
the
the character. And like
yeah.
vampires are so dumb.
The
I'm
Muppet,
like,
the Muppet Dracula. That's just what pops into my head.
yeah,
every
like or like
time.
the Count.
Count.
The
Yeah.
Count.
And like, all of that stuff is just so overdone and silly. But then you read the way Dracula is written, and it's just so epic, and it's done so well. And now I've actually since seen some really good movies with vampires and everything, you know. But when I was younger, it's just like Twilight and
Do you want to hear?
Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is
Do you want to hear some movies that were novelized?
Please. There's probably two.
lay some.
I mean, this
Lay
is the
'em
thing.
on
It
us.
clearly doesn't work the other way around. It just like
You make the film,
Well-
and then you write the book about the film. Those are just to make book sales, usually.
right.
Yeah.
It's just a money grab. Whereas like
Yeah, because if you create the
Or to
world with the movie and then
expand
you,
upon the
and
world,
then you
like-
were to expand on
Like
it,
Star Wars, like
it-
hyper Star Wars nerds will be like, yes, I will read every single book.
yeah, it became like fan fiction and stuff like that. But Deer Hunter was turned into a book.
I could see that.
Alien was turned into a book. 1979. E.T. was turned into a book.
That's interesting.
Back to the Future was novelized.
knew it.
Rain Man became a book. The Abyss. Home Alone.
Yeah, and who has ever read these and then told their friends like, oh, the book was way better.
I know.
And
where you
just-
hear that all the time when people start reading the book. But I think it might be that when people are reading, you know, a book first, it's like, you know, when I saw the Harry Potter movies, like I've never read the book, so I had to hear everyone and their mom complain about how the movies aren't as good and they didn't get this right and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I'm just watching the movies just for what they are, and I don't think they're that good either. But like there's there's some of them who are better than others, but
Yeah.
when you have something in your head already, and
That's
you,
what it
you
is.
experience something
Because in a book,
special.
in a book, you create your own expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A movie
Yeah.
creates an expectation for you.
Yeah.
So when you read a book and then go watch the movie, you're measuring it against what you've built up in your head.
Oh, no way.
It kind of feels like you're counterfeiting this.
Home Alone, Independence Day, The Mummy.
Oh, The Mummy.
I think it's so
The
funny when they
best.
put like these adventure sci-fi ones into books.
Well, it's like for kids or whatever, you know.
The Sixth
Yeah.
Sense, Van Helsing,
Newborns.
13 going on 30
Oh my
became a
God.
book. Anything, a lot of like horror-y, like Constantine became a book.
That's like just like with romance novels.
Apparently,
that's
this one's
so
interesting
easy to sell.
because this one made both lists, so somebody's wrong. V for Vendetta. This one's saying the movie came first.
Well, maybe the graphic novel was there, and then the movie came out, and then someone novelized and just made the like a written book.
And there's like
version.
some books, especially within that era, that like, or movies that have been made out of books from that era, but naming them different. Like they took a concept from like 1984, for example. V for Vendetta kind of came out of 1984,
Yeah.
but they just named it something different. But the concept is like pretty similar.
Yeah, you're right. You know what's funny that now that you say that too is the actor John Hurt was in the original 1984, like in the 70s,
that's
and then
fascinating.
he's in V for Vendetta and he plays the Chancellor.
Yeah.
So it's almost which is like the opposite character, but I feel like that was a little nod. 1984. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because you have like Big Brother and Newspeak and like all those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sort of totalitarian, scary future. The future we're slowly entering.
Is it true, though?
Yes.
They could be listening right now. Don't judge a podcast by
On
its
Spotify.
description. Don't listen to this whole podcast and then judge it.
Well, anything else we should touch on?
Yeah, which is better?
Okay, here's one point I did want to make. But you can I think for both, you can watch them. Like you can watch a movie for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons. Just like you can read a book for the wrong reasons. Like just because reading is maybe better for your brain doesn't mean that every book is like made equally.
Yeah, it's
know.
inherently better.
Yeah, it's not inherently better.
Well, what would be the wrong reason to read a book or watch a movie?
I mean, if it's trash writing and trash story,
Smut.
like, is it adding anything to your life?
Right, yeah,
Basically.
yeah.
You know, like for me, Twilight is that, for example.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, I think
You're like,
it
after I read
sucks you
the
in.
fifth book,
It
I
sucks
put it
you
down. I was
in,
like,
but-
that was trash. Why did I read that entire series?
Yeah. Or like, and I think like some modern writers that I've read, which I don't read a lot, just
Yeah.
because like in general, it's just like not a profound story. It's kind of a counterfeit of some.
Do you feel like it's rare that a newer author would come out and have something that's really of substance, or do you mean there's a modern genre that is?
I think it's a modern genre
more
because
surface level.
there are a lot. Like I guess I'm thinking like bestseller,
Like
what people are showing.
So like a new author could show up on the scene or has and
Yeah.
writes an absolute banger that just the words slap off the page.
Yes.
It's just
Good story,
yeah.
good writing,
Oh
all
my
those
gosh.
things.
Okay, cool.
But I guess it's more just like the things that that are advertised to you. People want to read for pleasure, or like want to read something easy for
Yep.
pleasure, which is not wrong. It's just more like
Well, it's probably
it's still like what kind of content are you?
You just said it's also goes for movies too. It's probably how
Yeah.
we feel a lot about certain movies that are just money grabs, or they're just
Everything.
You know, the movies that get like 90% ratings, they're like so good, and everyone's
Yeah.
going to see them. They're blockbusters, and you go and see it, and you're like, that was just a bunch of CGI, and that was just a hero who basically had no problems and overcame it. And this
Yeah.
is, you know, it didn't leave me with anything.
Yeah.
So I guess we're getting at that storytelling in general
Yeah.
can be done well or it can be done wrong, but it's what medium there's so many different mediums you can consume
Yeah.
it through.
Well, thinking about bestsellers too with books, like a lot of the time
By so many, I mean,
look-
too.
you look at like a table at a Barnes and Noble, and it's just like this is recommended, and like a lot of it is like people, like celebrities who write a book.
Yeah.
Or something like that, where it's like culture is just making this stay, in the bestseller because it's like, oh, cause this person. And it's just like, does that mean that this book is good? Because nobody's gonna seems to talk about it like a month later, And I'm sure some of these biographies are really fascinating, really interesting.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it just seems like, well, you're famous, so if you sold a book, it would sell well.
Yeah, it's true.
But I don't know.
Anyways, all that said, check out
Jed's
our
book.
boss's new book. It's coming out pretty soon.
It's called
Seven Momentous Steps to Getting More.
Yeah,
Story
I do
acceleration
think
in
we
your
should.
life.
I do think we should plug it because he has talked about it, but I honestly don't feel like he's nailed down the title yet.
No.
Has he?
Momentum.
Is it Momentum?
No,
because he said he went back
changed
on
that, I
thought.
think. Yeah.
And then it was like
Guys.
7 steps to story acceleration.
Oh man,
He was going to be on this podcast and he couldn't do it.
When this
I'm
title
sure
comes
he'll-
out-
he'll do a better plug than we will, obviously.
I
but
guarantee this will be a movie.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
I did what
The book
It'd be interesting if we made the movie first
and
then release the book.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ha.
So TBD on that.
to be honest.
Coming soon to theaters near you, maybe.
Yep.
Bookshelves.
I mean, I told them it should be called "Get Your Story Straight," and that you figure out what your story is and where you are in it. But
That sounds like a very
Oh,
Jed title.
Get your
I
life
know.
together.
You know what's interesting too that I just found out is Quentin Tarantino is making novel versions of some of his movies. So he made
I would
a
actually
novel,
love
he made
to
a-
read that.
a novel of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm like, I'm
That's-
definitely gonna read that.
That's how he writes his scripts, is in story form. Like
Yeah.
not story
Yeah.
form, in like novel form.
Right.
Which I think I
I've
wanna
read
replicate.
the script entirely for Hateful Eight because that is one of my
I have
favorites
not
that he's
read
made.
them.
And
I would.
it does, I think, inform, when you know kind of like the mood of each scene and character, and you have that description. I'm sure that's got to help the filming process.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're writing your own stuff. So yeah, it's just like, hey, just release that stuff.
I think that's great. I would definitely read that.
Kind of mad I missed the director's podcast.
You can listen to it
I know, but I mean, maybe we'll do
I
a
wanted
part
to
2.
be on it.
I don't want to be on it.
because you want to talk about The Prestige,
I mean,
the best movie ever, the greatest movie ever made.
Mike, that was a joke.
I know.
It is one
I'm
of
just kidding.
my favorites.
It's a book,
No, I
Imagine
out
us
of
ever talking about directors again.
no, out of which I have waned on Christopher Nolan like being one of my favorites. He used to be. It was my favorite Nolan film, but it's not one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
It's not the best of all time or anything like that.
It
but
is highly
out of the stuff
entertaining.
that he did, I watched it when I was young and was like, oh, it was kind of good. And then I watched it again later and I was like, pfft, that was awesome. And then pretty much from there it was downhill.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
for
You actually mentioned did you mention Memento? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Memento, Memento and Insomnia and like, oh yeah, they're so good.
Omnia was wild.
Everybody
Good.
take a shot. We talked about Chris Nolan.
Tenet sucked.
That's the name of the episode.
No, we already had one, so we just ripped apart Tenet.
You guys seen this movie at Caroline?
Yeah.
I'm excited for
Should we make a book out of that?
I almost like went down a rabbit hole with Luke earlier. I'm like, did you watch that, Caroline? He's like, no, and I was like, well, I almost like opened up Pandora's box. I'm like, if I don't have it in me.
Did anyone talk about Damien Chazelle?
No, surprisingly,
Yeah,
that
I like
would
him
be
a lot. He's one of my favorites.
that would be a great person to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a new one a few years from now. Babylon. It's a
Really?
period piece in Hollywood. Yeah, it's
Ooh.
got Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt.
Oh snap!
Isn't there
Nice.
isn't there already a movie called
So
Babylon?
it's Once Upon a Time
Probably.
in Hollywood. part two.
Generally he incorporates music
Yeah.
of some sort and
Damien
whatever.
Chazelle has an ability to make like vastly different films that have
Yeah.
a similar feel. You know, like
It's really cool.
his 3 movies. Actually, I've never seen First Man, but it seems like a completely
It is
different
completely
style.
different.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we were gonna get.
We'll
down
get
a whole
into
nother
that.
thing. Yeah, we'll go into that. later.
Anyways, if he wrote a book, it'd probably be better.
We'll just wrap this baby up.
I just read the play for La La Land.
Da, da, da,
Thanks for
Books
listening,
and
folks.
movies and books and movies. Goodbye. Bye. Bye. Goodbye. Books and movies.
Books are better. Well, that's sweaty.
It feels weird on my ears here.
Gosh.
What time is it?
Ears here.